Okay, so this is a radio segment where they basically hold court and they bring
Wait, wait, wait,
situations.
wait. Wait, hold on. Are we like about to start it now?
Oh,
We,
that's right. That's right.
we got to introduce. You get this fucking. God damn it, man.
Welcome
This
to
is the
the
first
show.
one of the rebrand. Yeah, all right, fuck it. We're just gonna. Anyway, the
Well,
radio show.
see,
Hold on to that. Anyway, all right. Welcome to Whiskey Wisdom. I'm your host, Shaq. All right.
and I am your host, Nahum.
Now, we're obviously kind of already getting started here. We have a very interesting list of questions to go through today. Okay. Well, tonight rather. But, first things first, I want to introduce a long-term friend and friend of the show, Melissa. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's been a long time since I was last on
Has
the show.
there's been a
In
couple
that
life events.
in
Um,
that time, I got engaged and married, I'm pretty sure. So I got married two
Congratulations.
weekends ago. Thank you.
How does it feel?
The same. People ask, "Oh, how does it feel to get married?" And I think my only satisfactory, honest answer is, it's about the same. It's good, but
Okay.
about the same.
That's good though. That means it was good beforehand as well. You know, and we are retaining a consistency that is good.
Yes.
Yes.
That way you're not coming down from a crash. Like,
Correct.
it was not like some fabulous vacation that you're like so sad to leave. It's like, no, it's the same. I'm still cruising.
Mhm. Okay.
That's fantastic. Um, were there any other major life events? We haven't had you on in what? It's been at least half a year, I'd say.
Yeah. Well, I work for a certain society, and that certain society was trending on Med Twitter in January for some interesting remarks at our annual meeting. And ever since then, we've been, quote, dealing with it, but also it's just been a bunch of diversity webinars, and no one really knows what's going on. So
Hmm.
that is my work situation. I've done a lot of major projects with them too. So like the cognitive dissonance of thing going on in the background versus all the stuff I've been doing for
Yeah.
work.
Your actual work per se.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
the projects I'm actually on.
Yeah.
Very strange.
I feel you.
I can't believe we're halfway through the year and that thing that happened in January feels like it still matters.
Hmm.
Happened very recently, but weird.
I mean, yeah, we are ripping and running through 2023. I think that so I actually heard a phrase the other day that made me uh, kind of reconsider the way that I view time. So like, as you're like younger and you're getting older, right? Then each
Okay.
year, the percentage of your life that is represented within that year gets smaller and smaller. So like when you're 10,
Mm.
each year is like about 10%, right?
Mhm.
And then as you get to 20s, 5%, 30, 2.5%. So it feels quicker. Like it's like there's like additional little piece on top of your life and it's not as extended as it was. Because
That's a
like
little.
recently,
Sorry. Go on, check. Go on.
I was gonna say because recently to me like it's a similar kind of like feeling to where it's like, oh, we're already here versus when I was younger, I feel like years in time went much longer
Flow.
than they do now.
Every day
Well,
mattered, or every day something interesting happened.
Hmm.
yeah. That's slightly dark if you were to equate that to the straw that broke the camel's back kind of thing. You're just like, yes, let me add a little sliver on top. In this case, us being the camels.
I mean, yeah. As we stack years, then like things change. Events happen. People get engaged and married, and and like things of that nature. So, but we did have some questions. All right. Nahum, did you wanna start us off?
I definitely can't, although I'm going to be honest, then I got lost in the middle of all the sauce with what we are starting with. Do we want to start with the meat one, or are we actually jumping into dating pastures and whether or not that is thing can be a thing? Like how that even came as a popping up as a question in my brain.
Yeah. Let's start with the one that's about pastors, um, real quick, because I am curious as far as the context that you did come up, with
For
it.
the
But
question.
also, yeah, but also
Yes, context.
it's a it's a strange idea to think about pastors dating, but
So the reason it came up is and I'm gonna move through this. A lot of the topics that have come up recently are somewhat based on life events that have happened recently, so they're naturally in some sort of darker tones. um and we are not going to dwell on it just because I've had the conversations with both of y'all, so we've kind of covered that, and maybe at some point we will cover it later in detail in the podcast. But um because it obviously comes from there, I'm not gonna super skirt it totally either. But since I think the last time we have released a recording, or since this would be the first time that a recording is made since before the events of the past 2 months, if I'm correct, Shaq. And
mhm.
so in that time, a lot of the reason for that is that my dad passed. Now, um, there's obviously a lot of the craziness and the pain and the loss and all that. Amongst though, through it all, I've obviously been grieving and coping and doing different things, and just in general, you know, made my peace with a lot of it, even if it's an ongoing thing. And just stuff comes up, like life and a lot of things still go on, and we deal and we still talk and laugh about a lot of things. In the midst of some of that craziness was the maybe more meat of the episode that we might get to later, which was a very humorous talk as we considered some of these changes. This one was less humorous per se at the beginning, but it was more of like, gee, I've never actually thought of this scenario up until this particular moment. The reason for that is that, as y'all may or may not recall, but my dad was the pastor of my church.
Mm.
Um, and semi recently as well, back in January, I had been made a deacon of the church. So, and then given based on my age, just based on my general participation in different stuff, that meant that when all this went down, I took on semi bigger roles at church and just in general as deacon and one of the leaders, which is what deacons are in many of the churches, or the general name often is just one of many leaders in the church. Um, took on a lot of the different tasks up to and including um, one Sunday out of the month is that I preach. Because of that, and because of other things, because I'm younger, because I'm obviously a son, and a lot of different things, I have gotten questions at different times, in different ways, and those have kind of died down now. But I've gotten questions to be like, so what is going to happen with the church? And very specifically, and often somewhat bluntly, like, who is going to take over the church? Are you taking over as pastor at the church? Which is a whole different conversation for maybe a like wrap up and all that stuff. Um, it's not really something I totally see, but it was a question that was posed. Because of the question, at different points I had to definitely think and ponder in a lot of this. And this was not by any means the major factor in how I've been thinking about all of it.
Uh-huh. Right.
But
Okay. Sure.
at some point, there was a very strange question and a very strange thought that popped into my head because people be asking me of whether or not I'm going to take the role of pastor and such in the church. And among some of the different reasons why I don't think it's really the time or not something that I'm being called for at the moment is the fact that in my head, I was like, gee, I am not prepared for some of this stuff. Up to and including, very much so, some married couple to come up to me and be like, hey, pastor, we need like guidance and counsel and all this. I'm not married. and here's the thing. Here's the thing. So I'm going to give the very like biblical thing for a bit to answer Melissa's earlier question. And then I'm going to give part of the reason as to why it doesn't necessarily work out that way often. To answer your question about like, can pastors date unless it's kind of like in the service of God and all that? There is kind of like passages or an understanding and stuff that like not just pastors, but anyone in theory would be better off not dating, not married, not any of this, but just like committing your life entirely to God and all this other stuff. So in that sense, can you be a single pastor? Yes, it would technically be a little bit better because you don't have these distractions of like kids and family and all this stuff. Like you have one job and you can give yourself entirely to that. Yes. But the same verse and all that kind of stuff basically says that like, look, if you can do it, if like your will is strong enough and you can like avoid temptation and all this and kind of live your life with it, sure, it would actually be very, very good. But if you know that you're struggling with all these different things and you're just like, you want this, or you have the temptation, not just of like sex and relationships and all that, but actual family and desires and earthly desires and all this, it's kind of like it would be better to just have the family. And then, yes, your stuff will be somewhat divided, but like you're grounded. So both are technically acceptable. The reason why that in a very real world now, I just don't necessarily know how that works out. It's like I said, like, how the hell is it going to work out when a family or a couple comes to me and be like, we are in need of counsel? I was like, well, let me direct you to these other people because I'm not married. So I don't know what you want me to tell you other than just be like, let me just open up scripture. And that, I mean, it works, sure, but it doesn't necessarily maybe hit the same. On top of what Shaq is imagining, the bonkersness of a pastor being out on date night and you just running into someone of his passion and be like, what? How am I at the same place as my pastor for a date?
I mean, listen. I think, okay. So again, I have an outside perspective to this, right? You know, I haven't been a part of a church ever. so
Same.
I mean,
You're asking two secular people to weigh in on this.
So I may not have necessarily all of the like nuance that is a part of this, right? But okay, first things first. I think that the likelihood of every pastor having a successful and happy marriage just sounds low. Just from a very base level, sounds pretty low. So to go to them for counsel, you know, I think that now again, without nuance, any sort of understanding as far as prerequisites to becoming a pastor, that if your advice was put blindly alongside other pastors and just, you know, kind of randomized and polled, you probably couldn't tell much of a difference as far as as far as your advice.
Shaq very clearly has no faith in the system. Literally are in the system.
So now to address number 2, okay, as far as yes, it would for sure be weird if it was like a Thursday evening, you know, I'm going out to a restaurant or to a bar or, you know, just some sort of like nighttime event, you know, where people are mingling and meeting each other. And I see my pastor, you know, out on a date with, you know, whoever. Then I'd be like, oh, okay, you know, that's a little weird, but also that pastor is much more in touch with the current happenings of of how to create a relationship in today's environment than older pastors, I would think.
I suppose, fair enough.
So, perhaps the advice could be a little more applicable because they're also out here in these streets. Um, so I don't know. I think that there's some positives that could come from that as well.
Well, I mean,
I have like 3 prongs of thought.
okay, go on.
So the first is my understanding of whether the head of your church can date is what kind of denomination you're from, because there's a lot of different ways to interpret scripture, your role in the church, your relationship to religion, your relationship to Jesus, your relationship to everyone else. So that's my first thing. What kind of relationship do you want to have with yourself, with your congregation, with potentially a romantic partner? Questions to ask yourself if you are a pastor looking for a date.
Okay.
The second is kind of like how social workers and therapists are trained to, respond to a lot of different, very complex situations. But the fact is, like, most people who deal in mental health are not going to experience everything, but they'll still be qualified to give you the tools to navigate life situations. And there's also therapists and social workers who can get it wrong sometimes. Does that mean that they're coming from a place of harm? No. Good intentions and all that. But it's like this weird, like, well, you don't have to experience something to be able to give well-meaning advice about it. Whether people think that's like, whether people are like okay with that.
Yes, for we are not experts. We're actually not even asked by people to give this advice.
Unsolicited, unprofessional advice. Yeah.
Okay. Excellent point, Melissa.
So just, put that little badge on your chest and be like, I'm ready. The third thing that this makes me think about is the way weddings are done. I've been to a handful of Catholic weddings at this point, and, there's so many readings, and I don't know the full context, but I think every single one they read that love is patient, love is kind, that passage. And every time I hear it, I'm like, why is this at every wedding? Because it's not about marriage.
No.
It's about love. And that's more general. And that's not just about being at a wedding. So I don't know. Thoughts?
Okay. I guess in like reverse order. I think that passage ends up being used a lot. One, because I'm gonna be honest, because it's probably easy. It's just easy that it's already like baked in and accepted as like a wedding service kind of like message, and so they can still use it. But I think you are right. It is not about like a couple, a romantic couple, just about love. I think probably why it gets used so much though is just because even if it's not direct, or even if it's not only applied to couples and like weddings and all that, like you said, it is about love. And I think there is a genuine or a general idea in often wedding culture or in like ceremonies for weddings where we focus on the love between the two people, which can be good and bad, because just not even just from a spiritual place or from like a religious place or any of that. Like, yeah, it is great, y'all should love each other, but there are other things y'all should definitely build into this relationship other than just love, like respect and trust and communication and the other stuff. But I think just as a society, even still applicable to the religious community or the spiritual community, we tend to focus or hyper focus a little bit on than just the love. So we like, cool, a passage about love, gold, and then we just go into it. And then the other ones is I guess, yeah, there is definitely a case for the fact that you don't necessarily have to be in that like experience something to be able to give the advice in. And I do get it. And truly, I think that in the case of like a single pastor or any kind of church leader who is single, or in like Catholic churches where it is the father and stuff, I think advice can still be given. I do question though, or I think about how maybe willing people are to actually then hear it out. If like people are willing to kind of think it through and think the same way as like we're mentioning right now, where you're like, well, just because he's not married doesn't mean he can't like advise on it. And I think a lot of people will be willing to still hear it out, and others will just be like, I feel like no. But that does actually then touch a little bit onto what you were mentioning, Shaq, as far as like pastors and their marriages. This is maybe more anecdotal and more of just like what I generally think. So obviously take it with a giant grain of salt, but I think it is generally the case from what I've seen that pastors and their marriages tend to be fairly solid. Pastors and their families, like as a whole family, more so like children, those tend to be or can be much, much rougher. The marriage one ends up being, I think, in my experience and what I've seen, a little bit more solid because that. Okay, the marriage.
Brooklyn.
Yeah, hey man, like that sort of makes sense. Like I was like, all right, it's normal enough. It's just it sounded closer. But anyways, yeah, the marriage I think tends to be a little bit more solid than we may necessarily think of off the bat, because two things happen. If you are still married, like if the person became a pastor after you were married and you're still kind of with them and going through it all, you have kind of chosen and made a case where you are also committing yourself. Oftentimes it's not as recognized, but pretty much just as much as the pastor. For the wives, like my mom didn't do the same jobs and do the same roles, but the support that she provided was frankly just as much, in the point where now after all is said and done and my dad has passed, like people are looking to her and be like, what are like the marching orders? And Ma's like, I was not chosen I was not placed, like this is not, I am not technically just the next default leader. I understand why maybe kind of feels like that to y'all, but that's not how it goes. And so I think for people who become a pastor after they are married, a lot of them, obviously time is a factor, but a lot of them, the spouse is kind of equally making that choice of like, they are both going into this together. And I think because of that, it's fairly solid. Just those who are a pastor, or like they're in the process of like training and all that, and then get married at that same time. I think similarly, like if you're dating someone who is kind of going to like seminary school and all this stuff and becoming a pastor, like you're also in this pretty much full on. Like you're going to be dragged into it, quote unquote. It's a willing thing, but you're going to be dragged into it to a certain extent. There is no like, well, they're going to go into the office, or like they're having a work event and I'm just not going to go to the work event. It's a like living thing where it does fully ingrain itself into your life. So I would actually think, or I'd almost be of the mindset that not all of them, that is definitely true, and I definitely understand reasons why, but I would be of the mindset kind of, even hopefully I would say that the relationships themselves are a little bit more solid than like the average one off the street, a la kind of like only 50% of relationships or 50% of marriages and then divorce kind of thing. I would think in that sense it's pretty solid, but there are also like friction and conflicts because the kids oftentimes just kind of get born into it. And oftentimes when they're younger, they are involved and they are down for it and all. But as they get older, that kind of gets a little bit tougher. So families, probably more strained. Couples, my hopefulness tends to think they're a little bit more solid.
Interesting.
This makes me want to go to the origin of this question, which was, it was permissive. Can pastors date?
Can pastors date? But yeah, I mean, I guess it would be like you said, you know, it kind of depends on the denomination, on you yourself as a person and all that.
And what you're describing in in partnership, the person you choose to date has to be on board, has to accept your values and kind of your mission statement for life, and say, "Cool, I get what you're about, and I want to be on board for this."
Yeah.
So I don't think there should be a pastor out in the dating scene that's not disclosing they're a pastor or
they're
going
a pastor.
to be someone. But that's just a general standard for people being out in the dating scene and not being honest about who they are.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. You know, I suppose there's frankly, I think if anything, it's a standard where like you should probably do it quicker. You know, I can maybe get away with 3 days before I'm like, hi, you know, I work for a structural engineering firm. It's not really it's not as forefront to who I am as a person to be like, hi, hello, I'm a pastor. Those are very, very different job titles and roles. But
maybe that's the origin of the question. Like, how am I putting myself out there?
So yeah, it was just a random thing of like, getting that question and then just kind of thinking through some of the implications. Because like you said yourself, Melissa, at some point it's like a very case-by-case basis of especially in this case when they were asking me not about dating, but about just like, are you going to be the pastor? But it's just the idea of like case by case and everyone having to ask themselves because yes, by like my denomination and probably the church itself, there is nothing that is keeping me, like there is no rule of like you cannot date. Pastors are allowed to be married and all that. Obviously, there is a standard and an amount of respect and a difference in dating norms per se that a congregation or believers or different people would expect of like a pastor dating than is probably the more quote unquote common or like standard in society. But the actual dating itself is allowed. There is, though, the funkiness of the idea that you're kind of tiptoeing and you're playing with a lot of different, necessarily like maybe quote unquote critiques or thoughts or like things because, you know, I like Shaq sees his pastor dating at some random place on Thursday, and then Shaq may not be the person that's like, yo, you will not believe who I saw as with so and so person and like all this, but that is just a natural part of life. Anyways, pastors not being immune, it is a funky way where like now you're dealing with real life, like things that happen in life anyways, but through the lens of a whole congregation kind of scrutinizing things, regardless of whether or not they should. So, and I would still very much like a family and wife and all that. So at some point later on, when they ask you, you're like, you know, you can be pastor and stuff like that. Not the times when they asked me, I had reasons that were different and like my answers were different. But at some point later on, I was like, yo, how would that even work or look like?
You know how some people worry about what their family will think when they bring someone home? It sounds like what you're describing is you're not just worried about your family, you're worried about everybody in the pews having an opinion and having to deal with it because they're not going to keep it to themselves.
And the crazy thing is that like I have no problem with whatever opinion people have like about my wife, like once I have a wife and all that stuff and all that. But it is the fact that like that before you get to that step, there is a
audience to your search.
No, there is a cast list of like different people or a casting call of different people, and it's like there's an enduring process where you're trying to like, you know, find the person.
Casting call is crazy. It's a wild way to describe dating. Is putting out a casting call. All right. Everybody see the script, right? Everybody see the script as far as like how this shit's supposed to go. Okay.
No. I was about to say like rotating cast, but then that's also bad because it just sounds like you're going through people.
Yeah.
You're revolving. And I was like, that's not what you want to do either. You know, again, these are things that like, you know, normal people don't have to question.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm gonna go refresh my drink real quick,
Okay.
and then I am interested to hear about this cheating blackmail fiasco. I think that could be
Okay.
a interesting kind of segue.
Speaking of being on the dating scene with honest intentions.
Well, the person who was being chatted up had honest intentions. The person doing the blackmailing had honest intentions. They weren't good intentions, but they were honest. They were honest about them wanting to get paid. Now, here is the problem, not problematic, but it will be slightly less entertaining if we just all agree on how this should have played out. It doesn't make for exciting entertainment. It makes for moral, education and such and advice, but not, it's still great, but not.
Excellent
Monkey
sound.
shoulder.
Excellent cork.
Yes. We have not gotten commentary on how it tastes, but is the cork alone might be worth it.
Honestly, it's a blend of both Scotch and like whiskey, and it's not bad. It's not bad. I bought it purely for the bottle. I thought that the aesthetics of the bottle were like cool, but I think that on a monthly basis we'll like try a new bottle or something and get a proper kind of review on it until we get sponsored. Until we get sponsored, then we can just drink for free. But anyway, so this radio tale, these segments that you hear on the radio as you're going to work. Mm-hmm. Which one is this one?
This one is called Kiki's Court. The judge is called Kiki. His name Kiki. They basically hold court on matters, and oftentimes people write in with their issues or with their things that they want a verdict on. Mm-hmm. This one, I don't have the actual story verbatim from the guest, even if it was read, but I have the situation, and that is that a young lady went out on the town at night, and when she was at a bar, she found her roommate's boyfriend in a compromising situation at said bar. And she took pictures because without pictures, it didn't happen. Now,
that's a general rule of the internet.
the guy noticed and clocked her, or either she told him it. I don't have that necessarily noted. It's not that important. But the guy asked her not to reveal these pictures or tell the roommate, and offered to pay for said silence, which, while we were not told how compromising of a situation this was, the offer to pay does seem to indicate it was a very compromising position.
Yeah.
This girl, the roommate, agreed that she would not tell her roommate what she saw or show the pictures in exchange for her phone bill being paid for 1 year. Now, this arrangement started, and months later, hold it together, Shaq. Months later, the guy missed a payment. The blackmailing roommate, I don't know if blackmail is the right word. The roommate, the witness, gave the guy a little bit of extra time. She was quite understanding that just kind of missed whatever payment that day.
How generous.
And gave the guy a little bit of extra time to make the payment. However, that time came and went, and the guy still hadn't paid the phone bill. So, having the extra time having expired, she told the roommate what was going on, or she told the roommate about the compromising situation. Understandably, the guy is upset. No real word on how the roommate took it. And she wants to know, was she wrong for telling?
All right. I mean, listen. I'm finna I'm finna cook, Melissa. So I don't know if you want to go first.
I want to. I'm
All
letting
right,
you
okay.
cook, please.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You let me cook. Okay. Here's what's interesting to me. Okay. Um, I think that it's federally accepted that blackmail is a crime for a reason. Okay.
Mm.
I think that there's a general blanket idea as far as this is wrong. Um, Now I'm gonna tell you where he fucked up.
Where you fucked up.
There's yeah. Well, okay. Okay, he fucked up originally because of the compromise vision, but regardless of that, after
I,
being caught,
I will add.
okay.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you really quickly, Shaq, because I don't think I actually have it here in my notes, and I'm just remembering as we say this. I believe it was noted from the language and when it was writing that she did not demand payment. He offered.
Up front.
That's what I'm about to say.
Like
Unprompted.
he offered for the silence, correct. So she was just kind of like, now it's also unclear. It could have been implied blackmail. It could have been like, I have this,
Hmm.
I'm about to send it to her,
What you
kind of
finna
like,
do?
sort of, yeah. So without not necessarily a demand, but like, it could have been a leading thing. But it was him offering. So, uh,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
not a
yeah. So
crime.
yeah, yeah, just a very shitty agreement. Just a really terrible fucking, you know, it's like
I mean, I'm not saying I would do this, but 1 year free
okay,
phone
look, listen,
is
listen, 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 listen. This is
quite a
this
deal.
is now I'm going to take it to a real life example and then bring it back into where the fuck this is, right? But this is very akin to the 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 stores that offer the loans for when you get paid, and they're like, hey, listen, we'll give you like 4,000. You give us 1,000 now, and then we'll kind of charge you interest, yada yada, right? So with like payday loans, you make terrible agreements because there's a dire situation that you need to handle up front, right? And you're like, okay, I'll worry about the rest later. Those are never made in good faith. So if you bring it back into this scenario to where, she's at a bar, doing whatever she's doing, she peeps her roommate's boyfriend, you said, right?
Mhm.
He's, in some shenanigans, sure. She takes her phone out, decides, oh, this is an opportunity, right? Takes pictures, doesn't just send it straight to the roommate because that would be, I don't know, loyalty or something to be like, by the way, your boyfriend's cheating on you. I just figured out you know now, right? Without even including him at all. But she went to him and was like, no, 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 no. I can gain something from this. Went to him, showed him the proof, and said, okay, so what we finna do? Am I finna send it to her? Or can we work out like a little like, listen, I ain't got much. I ain't got much. I might be able to help you out with like a bill or something, bill it to. She's like, well, listen, I got this phone bill that's been kind of nagging me. I don't
Monthly, on a
really,
monthly basis.
really want to pay it. So here's the thing, okay? Um, you pay my phone bill, not just this month, but for the next year, and then I might forget about it. Right? Like there's still no guarantee at the end. This is the thing about blackmail, Nahum, right? There's no guarantee of resolution on the other side.
Which is, by the way, folks, why Shaq does not negotiate with terrorists.
I do not negotiate with terrorists. We did this on an earlier episode to where we were talking about this was with
Child,
Nahum's coworker, I believe, to where it is
no,
tradition
this.
within
Oh, maybe go ahead.
yeah,
Maybe
yeah,
I
yes,
might have
yes,
this.
yes, to where it is tradition within
Oh,
a a
a
a
Indian
particular yeah, yeah,
to steal the groom's shoes.
that in a Indian wedding that there is um a routine, I guess. I don't know
Yeah.
what the better word for it is. Um but a common practice to steal the shoes of the groom and to hide them.
Yeah.
Right?
The kids do it. So it's not like a
Right.
That
Yes.
sort of makes it better.
And then the kids say, if you want your shoes back, give me money. Okay? I don't negotiate with terrorists. There's no way that I'm finna get blackmailed by kids at my own wedding. There's no shot. And this extends to any form of blackmail.
And this is why it's fascinating, because I've just now realized that Shaq just considers all children terrorists. Because the instance I was thinking of was when we had a friend of Shaq's on Sophie, and we were talking about kids going on hunger strike because they didn't have food that they liked. And Shaq said, I don't negotiate with terrorists. You will pass out from hunger before I just give you candy or whatever this random thing that you want me to buy is.
I mean, listen.
So, I didn't realize that's where we were going to end up this episode, but yes, Shaq believes children are terrorists.
Sure. Yes. So to extend that, I can't be online with any form of blackmail because there is no guaranteed end to said thing. There is also no guaranteed non-alteration of the contract to say, hey, now all of a sudden I want more, right? You hang an ass out. Ain't no way I can be in that situation. You burn my bridge immediately. I'm not paying you shit. If I survive, I survive. If I don't, then I don't. But you ain't getting a goddamn thing from me. And this dude agreed to a year-long phone contract. Made it a couple months in and was like, oh, maybe this is wrong. Missed the payment. She was like a creditor and was like, listen, you got a derogatory mark on your credit, but we're willing to forgive it for a little while if you could still make the payment. And he fucking missed the payment again. And he hit back at square one, but she still got 4 months paid. Don't. It's a terrible way to be. And I don't understand why you would volunteer to put yourself in that position. But that's all I got to say. Melissa, I don't know, whatever commentary you had as well, please. Because now I'm getting upset. Now I'm actually getting
like if he was the one being blackmailed on this time.
Here, I wanna go down the sidetrack about Indian weddings and shoes. It's called Juta Chupai. It's the bride's family hides the groom's shoes, and it's kind of, two sides of the coin, right? One, it's like a way to bring the family together, a little mischief, a little fun. Two, it feels like it's just another part of the dowry. Like, weirdly, the groom has to pay to get his shoes back. But he's already, entering the family, and I don't know why. Money has to be extorted from this guy who's just trying to get married. Whatever. Interesting.
Not negotiating with terrorists.
Here's my intrigue with this scenario. I mean, first of all, the roommate decided that the price of her silence, the price of her, she's fine with getting a year's worth of phone bill payments and living with the knowledge that her roommate's boyfriend cheated on her roommate, right? Mm-hmm. She's like, for this amount of money, maybe I'll forget about it, and it's not my business. Even if you do not care about your roommate at all, if you're completely neutral about your roommate, would you not feel like...
You're saying the amount is too low, Melissa? Is that the problem?
No. I'm saying that... Yes, actually, I am saying that. It seems like a paltry sum. That's like nothing compared to living with the knowledge that you kept your mouth shut about something you could have been honest about. But even if you hated your roommate, would you not get some joy from telling your roommate that the boyfriend cheated on her? Like, that's evil joy.
Things play out.
Right. But then you're not responsible for anything. You're not responsible to either of these people. You could just let the drama play out. Hands free. I have nothing to do with this, right?
So you're saying take the money and do it, or you could take the money and do
12 months. Why wait for that's so uncomfortable to me, because I don't know how long you're living with this person, but just knowing how messy they are, how potentially messy they are for 12 months, I'd be like, I don't want you to pay any. Give me $1,000 up front, and then maybe I'll.
Cash now is
And
always better
Melissa
than
will
cash
still
later.
tell them. We'll still tell the
That's
roommate.
crazy. Every day we stray further and further from God's light, and Melissa is saying, "Listen, I look. The monthly payment clearly is dependent upon your financial situation, as we saw, right? There came a point where he couldn't pay it no more."
She said, how can I trust you to make a monthly payment when you are clearly untrustworthy? I need my payment up front. This is why deals are made in cold, hard cash at the time.
Yes.
Oh, no.
And also, why would you be like, yes, I'll protect your secret, person I'm not living with who did wrong, and also I don't care about? Why is the person receiving the money protecting the boyfriend?
I mean,
why would she not?
That's just money. That's straight. That's just straight up there. That's how the world is more work. That is a mercenary right there. But
it was the detail where the person accepting money, the roommate, was like, okay, you can't pay it this month, like, just take your time, that's fine. Like, it was that detail for me where it's like, okay, so you have no moral core.
No, it's because dead people can't pay you, metaphorically in this case. That's why loan sharks don't just kill you when you miss a payment. They break your knees. You know, he's out here trying to get paid, and if he still pays the next month, sure, give him an extra week, but only a week, because people need to understand that this isn't a game.
I don't play. Okay, I'm not an information broker. I cannot be holding on to this kind of knowledge and just like living with it. I'm like, okay, your boyfriend cheated on you. You should know. I don't want to know. I want to wipe this from my memory.
Well, listen. You can feign ignorance though, right? As the broker, be like, I didn't know about this shit. And then he's like, but I paid you this money. And you're like, oh yeah, like you were sending me.
We're supposed to trust what you say?
Yeah, right. Yeah, your credit's already terrible. You were lying to start with. So why should we believe you now? Like, it's a really fucked up place to put him mentally. But like a really gaslighty fucked up place to put him. But times are hard out here, man. Inflation's crazy. You got to do what you got to do to survive.
There were people on the radio. Okay, there were people on the radio that were. This is like a group of 6 or 7, I think. There was people on the radio that were like, "Look, what if I don't even like this roommate? What if I have nothing for the roommate?" That is where some people threw just basic human decency out the window. Okay, other people started to take more of Melissa's route. Now, Melissa didn't say she would do this, but she sort of like started hinting at it, or like the specific words kind of allowed for some of that interpretation, where there were people on the radio that were like, look, I'm gonna go up to the person and be like, $1,000 right now, gets paid, turns around, hey roomie, I just want you. and their version of it is like, look, if you are out here scamming and playing the game, it's not my fault if you lose. You're out here doing things you shouldn't, and you got by me, who charged you and still told.
2 things. Okay, 1, the opposite of love is not hate; it's indifference, right?
That's true.
That's
and even if you are completely indifferent to a roommate, I guess everyone's on a different moral scale, right? But if you don't care about this roommate, why would you demonstrate more effort for the cheating boyfriend by entering a financial agreement with him to withhold information? That is my perspective on this whole thing. Because you're already in a financial relationship with the roommate. You're sharing space. Okay? Right?
I hadn't thought about that.
Why would I add a financial relationship with the boyfriend to pay my phone bill when he's not reliable?
This is true. I'm gonna be honest with you, Melissa. I haven't thought of that. I would now. Again, I'm not saying I would do this, but I was just thinking of it from their perspective of like the boyfriend as an add-in. The roommate isn't necessarily an add-in, but she is. She in fact is, because you are roommates. You need her to still be adding all the stuff she's currently adding into the relationship.
as a
Rent,
person who's had a
utilities.
terrible roommate, a handful, but an extremely egregious one, right? Like, I would have done anything to get out of that situation. So even if this witness hates the roommate, why would you not want to shake things up and just get rid of the knowledge you have? Just like, well, here it is. Here's what I saw. Have fun. Like,
Well,
That kind of
well,
sounded
okay.
like Melissa also kind of wants to hurt the roommate, but it's still fair.
No.
well,
See,
really, you're hurting the relationship that's never going to work because the guy cheated.
well,
Mhm.
listen. Here's the thing. You're not perceiving the gain that the witness gets here, right? It's gain from two scenarios. It's
Mhm.
gain from a financial perspective, but also in the case that she doesn't like her roommate, it's gain of I know that emotionally you will implode soon, and you don't know that yet. So every time that I
Shaq said,
talk to you, there's a little joy that I have internally knowing that soon everything will fall apart for you.
he said, it's not enough that I should win. Others must also lose.
Lose.
Exactly.
That's why I
So,
think the roommate relationship is the most interesting one in this little triangle.
yeah,
Yeah.
fair. Because if there was a healthy relationship, as I said, you would assume it would be like, okay, if I end up extorting the boyfriend, which again is illegal, but if I want to, go about that form of activity instead of the extended blackmailing, um, then I would do that and then go tell the roommate, right? So I would, maintain my relationship with the roommate, but also come up on $500. You know what I'm saying? But
Question.
if I didn't want to
What
preserve either, and I wanted to go scorched earth on either, then I'm going to gain as much as I can from either one.
on that note, question, okay. Let us, if we can, leave the roommate part of this to the side
Mhm.
Okay.
for a quick moment. Okay. Based on the fact that the agreement was for the full year, I am curious to see what y'all think about her asking the question to the court and to the radio. Just the idea, like, was she? This is why it's hard, but that's why I say put the roommate situation to the side. Was she wrong for telling after this agreement had been established that the phone was being paid for the year because he still hadn't paid the bill? You know,
This is an
can
informal
can
agreement.
can you still judge that as its own independent action of being right and wrong, independent of all the other stuff?
I have a job, right? If
I
Yes.
presume you do, Shaq. My understanding
if
is you do.
I we have a contractual agreement that I'm going to be paid a particular amount for amount of time that I take from my life to, assist the company.
Hmm.
If I stop receiving payment, I don't have any obligation to continue to work for this company. So I understand what you're saying, right? As far as like, I mean, she even gave him like a little grace period, which I think is absolutely insane.
It's
That's
quite
what I'm
kind,
saying.
actually.
That's what
You
I'm
know,
saying. Like
you
this
know,
witness is forging a more forgiving and accepting relationship with the cheating boyfriend than the roommate or the other person in the equation. This is more charitable than I would ever be. In the pursuit of money?
Hey, the world has committed worse things,
uh,
far worse things in the same
honestly,
pursuit.
honestly, Melissa, I think that's an incredible point. Um, as you were saying, just the nature of how charitable she is.
How
She's
understanding.
right. How like okay, I get it. Times are rough. Just make sure my shit's paid next month, and then we can just continue on with this path. It is absolutely insane. I've never heard of someone being blackmailed or extorted, but with forgiveness. Usually, usually it's like, as Nahum said, you don't pay me, I take a kneecap, right? I don't get my money, you may not hear from your kid, but
Consequences.
right, consequences for actions, but to have leniency, to say, look, times are rough.
To extend mercy to your victim.
That's the most unhinged thing about this. For me.
Extend mercy. Oh man. I mean, again, just to kind of bring it all back, okay? I am a proponent of not negotiating with terrorists, and what I mean by that is, well, for one, if I'm in an Indian wedding situation, as Melissa said earlier, sure, maybe it's tradition, right? Maybe it's supposed to bring the family together. I'm walking around barefoot at my wedding because you took my shoes and you're extorting me. This is not okay, right? Now, to extend it to any other situation to where someone has damning information on me and they're like, look, Shaq, I'm gonna tell somebody unless you give me, X item, X amount of money, whatever actions. You won't have to tell them, fam. I'm sorry. You won't have to let them know. I'll live with the
Shaq
consequences
said,
of my
"I'll
actions.
tell." Much like
Yeah.
Hamilton, I'll tell them myself.
I'll go tell them right now. You will have no power in this. But the
I
idea
agree.
of someone else having power over me, I just can't live with.
It's just nauseating.
Yeah, I can't do it. That someone else has power over what I can and can't do because of fear. Nah, no shot.
12 reminders. 12 months of being reminded of the thing you did and having to pay in installments for
You
an
gotta you got a budget for blackmail. That's crazy to me.
and then he didn't budget properly.
Right.
Melissa said, "Why would you even start this if you can't finish it? What was the point?"
And at the end of the 12 months, are you thinking you're scot-free? Are you like, great, now I can
Right.
cheat again and get caught again?
He's like, cool. Now, now that our deal is done, as if suddenly she was like, okay, deal satisfied. Actually, you know what? Based
She might
upon
have. She
based
might.
upon
She
the
gave
amount
him
of
a
grace
grace.
that she gave, then she may have honored this blackmail deal.
People say there
and
is no honor among thieves, but this person acted quite honorably. She said, "Look, maybe you just missed the date or the date on the calendar. I'm gonna let you get back to that. You know. There was honesty in what she said. Melissa disagrees with me, but this person doing the blackmailing was honest. She was not good or moral, but she was honest in what was going to happen.
the cherry on top of this whole situation is the roommate and the cheating boyfriend might not even last the year. So what was this all for?
I mean, that's what I think that he may have been hoping for, right? Was that, listen, I just want a couple more months of being able to sleep with somebody. Just don't blow it for me. Where this is probably gonna go south anyway. This is why I'm cheating in the first place. So just let me kind of, enjoy this for a little while longer. I'll pay you a little shitty phone bill, whatever.
So that's what it was. Just cuffing season. You just wanted to get through
exactly,
that. Okay.
Exactly, right.
Is cuffing season worth 1 year of phone bills?
No, but that's what he's saying. It was really only 3 months. He already planned for it to only be 3 months.
Exactly. And then he stopped planning. He was like, all right, this shit's over with anyway. Fuck it, go ahead and tell her.
Go on.
But she still won though. She got money out of it.
She still got money at the end of it. Yeah.
I don't know.
Interesting. Well,
okay, it's ESH. Everyone's shitty here, except for the roommate who doesn't know. ES.
Educational Service Announcement.
ESH. Everyone's shitty here.
Oh! I see.
Right.
I was like, is this a different form of PSA? I am unfamiliar with this acronym. Yes.
Okay. Did you? Were there any others? Or...
No follow up to this question. That was really the big one I had. Whether or not we can judge it as a separate action.
Okay. Now, would you like to move to the that I had, or no?
Oh, sure, because Melisa seemed very, very prepared.
Okay. Well, let me go gather this real quick because I threw my phone across the room earlier. So even though my skills are locked, my connectivity is still locked. So I'm still not getting the most effective output that I could for input. So that's why I'm kind of angry that Melisa got to that answer in 30 seconds, and it took me 3 hours.